Another way to help you and your family prepare to receive the second coming of the Savior Jesus Christ is to recognize when God is talking to you. This will be very, very important. How I know that God is talking to me, one of the ways is that I start to see coincidences or patterns. This is especially important in the times when I have felt depressed or really emotional. Some of those times, it's sometimes hard to feel the love of God, or sometimes you feel confused. At those times, I really did rely on patterns. I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head, but really just sometimes like a name would repeat, or I'd have like a deja vu, or something would just stand out as like a highlight in some way. And I would just hang on to those little things and recognize them and write them down. Little miracles I would continue to write down, and I kept a miracle journal, and that was helpful too, because then if I recognized those things, I could start recognizing like when God sent me somebody, and then I could start recognizing a certain pattern or a certain way, a direction that he was trying to talk to me. And so that was helpful. I started to recognize what his voice sounded like when I was very, very young. I could feel his love with a warming in my bosom when my church leaders would speak, the prophet or the apostles, during conference, or sometimes at church. I would feel this really warm feeling in my heart at certain times, and that feeling, I knew it was God, and I knew that I could not recreate it, and I couldn't feel it by myself in any other way. It was something I just knew was him. And so I learned to pay attention to that feeling, and I could feel it, in nature, and when I was being really still and paying attention, I could sometimes feel it. But when I hit my head really hard, I feel like at 10, around that age, I feel like I kind of really struggled to feel that feeling for a lot of years. And like I've said before, I feel like the iboga actually has helped me a lot to heal that part of my brain, and to help me to be able to recognize those feelings again. And I think a lot of the processing through emotions helps with that as well. But recognizing what the love of God feels like, recognizing how he talks to you, what his voice sounds like, and then teaching that to your children will be very, very, very important. Recognizing the Lord's prophet. This is something that is a very sensitive topic at this time, I feel like, because we live in a very just unrestful world. And I've had a testimony of the truthfulness of the Church of Jesus Christ for a long, long time. And I've shared with you before that I've always known, that I've always known that it's true. And I'm so grateful. I hold that testimony near and dear to my heart. And I believe that it's one of the greatest gifts of going through what I went through, because I held on to what little good that I had with all of my heart. And part of that was that good feeling of God that I felt when I was a kid. And when I was a kid and I heard the prophet's voice, I knew he was the prophet. And as I was a teenager, and as I even struggled to feel the Spirit of God on a regular basis after my head injury, I prayed and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed to have the testimony that my dear friend had of Joseph Smith, to know that he was a prophet. I wanted to know with all of my heart. And I struggled for many months. I believed that he did. I believed that he was. But I wanted to know, to have that confirmation, to have that testimony, and I wanted to feel that spirit again. And as I was teaching my kids at a camp, at a girls' camp, I taught them this story of Joseph Smith again and again and again and again, all summer, every week. And this one week, it just hit me so strong. This spirit, this feeling that I knew was God, that I knew that I could not recreate, and I knew that Joseph Smith was a prophet. And since then, I have had many experiences with Joseph Smith the prophet. And I've had other experiences with other prophets, because I've heard that you have to have, if you have a testimony of Joseph and you have a testimony of the current prophet, then all the prophets in between have to have been prophets as well, because the line had to progress for the priesthood authority, for the true power of God to have gone through. And so I've strived to have a testimony of every prophet as the line of authority has gone through. And it's been hard to watch my friends and my cousins and families, my brother and my sister, leave or take carelessly the covenants and the words of the prophets carelessly. It is easy to take the words of a man and tear them apart. It is easy to try to analyze something that was said 200 years ago. It is easy to put your own judgments on something that you don't understand. There's no way you can describe God. There's no way that you can confine him, put him in a box. And there's no way that you can explain the motives of, I don't know, you can't even explain the motives of your grandmother who lived, a couple generations before you, let alone someone who's not even in your family line, somebody who lived a couple hundred years ago, somebody who's a god, somebody who lived, why are we doing this? Okay. It's crazy. The only way that you can know if a prophet is a prophet is to ask God, not ask man, not look for authorities, not read stupid books that it's dumb. It's dumb, guys. So, okay. So Words are insufficient. Jesus even, there's no way that you can talk to the whole world. It's been hard to make these videos. It's been hard to talk to you guys and to tell you the things that I need to tell you, because there are many people that are listening, many different kinds of people. And when our prophets and leaders are talking to the whole entire world, it is really hard to say the things that need to be said. And they are judged very harshly and very critically for saying the things that God needs them to say. And if you can imagine, for example, the parable of the 6 blind men who never saw an elephant, okay? Never knew what an elephant was. You've maybe heard this parable before. They come across an elephant, and all of them describe the elephant differently, because one of them feels the trunk and they say it's a spear, the tusk, and say it's a spear, and one of them feels the trunk and it's a snake, and one of them feels the leg and says it's a tree, and one of them feels the body and says it's a wall, and the other one feels the tail and says it's a rope. And none of the blind men get the full picture. And they all go into the town and they spread the story of this thing that's out in the jungle, and nobody gets it right, obviously. And so a seeing man decides to go out into the jungle and see what they are, seeing in the jungle. And he sees an elephant. When he sees the whole picture, the tusks, the trunk, the ears, legs and tail and all, and sees the whole picture. And when he is able to go back and describe what he sees to the blind men, then maybe they're able to get this picture in their head. But the thing is that prophets are able to see behind that wall, behind that curtain, into the jungle maybe, but sometimes are not allowed to reveal all of the details. And sometimes you have to rely on the fact that they're the ones that can see and you're the one that's blind. And that takes a big leap of faith. The only way that you take that leap of faith is by having the facts, and the facts come from the feeling that's here. You don't have to just go blind. It's okay to ask questions. In fact, God expects us to ask questions. When, for example, COVID-19 happened, there was a lot of questions when our prophet highly recommended that we take the COVID shot. There was a lot of vaccine. There was a lot of conversation about this, and some people left the church because of it. I think I've talked about this before. And we didn't want to get the COVID vaccine because we have our own beliefs about that. I feel like there was a lot going on with that seemed a bit suspicious to us with things that were going on in the world, and our freedoms. But I already knew, because of my past experiences with God and my past experiences with President Nelson being a prophet, that I needed to follow the prophet, okay? And that the prophet was seeing something that I did not see, as a blind person. And so my family and I prayed about it, and we felt a confirmation that for our family, that was the decision that we would make. And I did not judge anybody else's family for making a different decision, because that, in a way, was a parable, like the parables that Jesus gave, was meant to be taken for each family, for each person, and prayed about and received by God at their level of understanding. So I hope that is understood. Please ask God, get the proofs. Don't jump blindly. That is not my recommendation. But pray and ask God and get those confirmations and get those proofs, because He will tell you. He will. And as you continue to rely on the proof, and it will come. If it doesn't come immediately, that's okay. It will come. Like I told you, it took weeks and even months for me to get that testimony of Joseph. And not only that, but that testimony was solidified even decades later. So keep at it. And that will help you significantly as this second coming time approaches.